Okay, welcome back. So now we're going to look at how to create a primary key of sorts. And the of sorts is important here because what we have is from the FEC data, we have name field, which is last name comma first name, and then a zip field, which has some of it is zip 5, some of it is zip 5 or zip plus 4. And so there's no direct primary key that I can take and match one to one with the proprietary database. And so I can tell you in the proprietary database we have donors, and so we have first name, last name, address, but we have the full address field, and over here we do not. So what I need to do at this point is to try to create something that, while not being a perfect one-to-one match, will at least get me close. And so here's my thinking on it, and that is I want to create a identifier that will, at the very least, be something that will match a good portion of donors we already have to the donor file, because what we're looking for is donors that are donors to federal campaigns that are not in our donor database so far. And so I need that match, and I'm okay with it being a bit of a fuzzy match, so that it's not exactly correct, but at least gives me a place to start looking. And how I thought I was going to do that is to just grab the last name and then connect it with the zip code. And then with that, it's kind of a pseudo key of sorts. It's actually going to, so if I have a John Smith and Susan Smith, and they both live in the same zip code, well, it's going to count that person as the same person. But it will at least give me something, and it will kind of take the it will undercount in a way, because there will be people. So let's say there is a John Smith and Susan Smith, and John Smith's the donor to the federal campaign. Susan Smith is the donor to the nonprofit. They both live in the same area code. Well, it's going to miss John Smith as a potential donor. But I'm okay with that, because, again, what I'm looking for is a prospect list, and I would rather have a list that dropped off people that had a chance of being related to donors we already have, at least for this particular use case, than to have something that created a greater option of falsely saying this person wasn't a donor, because that would be the more embarrassing one, right? If we called you up and said, hey, you're not a donor, but they'd already given money to the nonprofit, that's the case that we want to avoid. So it's, what's worse, the false negative or the false positive, in essence. And so it's not going to be perfect, telling you that right off the bat, but it's something. And so let's look at how we would do that, how we would create this primary key. And right off the bat, I want first name, well, actually, I want last name and zip code. And I don't want first name because people spell their first name a couple of different ways depending on how we might have them in the database. So it's usually there's not as much variation in the spelling of last names, but they do occur. So in this instance, what we need is a way to separate out the last name from the first name. And so we see that usually the separator here is a comma. And all I did at this point was go and look this up. PostgreSQL documentation. This will become your best friend. And so I found this function here. And so split part, and it tells me what it does. It splits string on delimiter and returns given field counting from 1. Perfect. So let's see what it does here. Split part, and then I want to give it a text, and so the text is the column that is name. What am I splitting it by? And so that is, it is a comma separated value, and then I need to tell it which part I want, and I want the first part. There we go. So I can go ahead and run this and see if it gives me, all right, yep, it is splitting based on the comma. It's giving me the first part. So now let's look at the zip code here. And you know, some people had just 5 zip, some people have the zip 5 plus 4, so that's a 9-digit zip. And so what I did is I went back to our documentation here, just looking at the different functions that are available. And so I found one of them. Let's see, are you over here? Left. So returns the first in characters in the string. When in is negative, return all but last. Okay, and so what this allowed me to do is it will allow me to take the left from zip column, and I want to get the left 5. That will give me the first 5 in the zip column. Here we go. And so this will kind of even out for places like here where we don't have the, where this one has the additional 4 digits, and it just will not be useful in this type of matching. So I just wanted the first 5 digits, and that kind of standardized for me there. Okay, and so now we see this is working. So I'm just going to get it out the way here for a second. And so I'm gonna place another column in here that I will use for our matching. Yeah, I need to alter table. Add column, and so I'm just going to call this last zip because it is the last name and zip, and then I need to tell it what kind of data I want it to store, and it is text data. And so let's see if that works. All right, perfect. So let's come back and okay, this gives us what we wanted from before. Let's ask for the last zip column. There we go, we're null. And so again, what we want to do is something called concatenate. There we go. And so we have a concatenate function here. And before I would do an update, we always want to test it. And so if we concatenate, let's see, what was that? CAT. And then it says any number of the arguments separated by comma. So this will allow us place that there. So the first argument is to have the last name filled here, and then we're going to add to it the last of the first 5 of the zip. There we go. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, so now we've created our pseudo key. And so it's a good time to go ahead and create this. So we want to update individual donors and concatenate, or oops, sorry, set last zip equal to this concatenation, and I don't want to limit it. I want it to go all the way through there. Go ahead and end the SQL statement and run it. Okay, so now let's see if that worked. So if we select name, let's go ahead and get zip in there, and then last zip, and we need to tell it from individual, put a limit on it so that it doesn't pull everything, and let's see what that looks like. And that's looking good. And so now we have our kind of pseudo primary key, and I can do this exact same thing from the data from the proprietary database and link it through a join. And then the ones that join up, well, those are people that have a high likelihood of having been in both tables, of being in the federal election donor table and in the proprietary nonprofit donation table. And so we're looking for people that don't exist in either of those, and that would be a left join. And so we would start off with the data from the FEC, do a left join to the data from the proprietary database. Like I said, I can't show that one to you here. And pull a, so let's just do something here where zip is equal to 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, and I'm just pulling a random one here. Zip is equal to that, and is that a, there we go. So what we would do after we've done that left join is ask for a column in the proprietary table that does not exist in the FEC table. And so if there's a match, it's going to pull that thing from the proprietary table. If there's not, it's going to be null. And so you could pull a where that column is null, and then you have a non-matching query. Hopefully that makes sense. Due to non-disclosure, that is about as far as I can take you here personally with this challenge. But I can tell you, using this method, I was able to get about 800 people in local area that had donated to a federal campaign that had not donated to the nonprofit I was working for. And so it's a method that works. There might be more people that it's leaving out, but it definitely works, and it has been a valuable tool to have. So uh, I will leave it there, and I will see you for the next challenge here.